right, some thoughts on thinking, section 2. This section starts out talking about Descartes, right, and his cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. And Descartes, when he's going to school, realizes, right, that a lot of things he taught, pretty much everything he's learned as he's growing up is questionable, doubtable, something is dubitable, right? And so he decides to one day sit down and find out what is that can be doubted, what cannot be doubted, and put it into his doubts for all time. What he wants to do is reassemble a philosophy of belief structure from a certain proposition, and from these propositions, then build out an entire philosophical structure that will not be something that will be falsified in the future. So people won't have to go through what he went through, learning a bunch of stuff just to find out it's false. And so he comes with this program of radical doubt. Right, he's going to try to doubt every proposition that he can think of, right? And so he decides it's easier than going through each belief singly, which we have many beliefs, is to come at them from their individual basis and their foundation, why the belief was derived. So for instance, our senses, right? We derive a lot of our beliefs from just simply looking around the world, paying attention, listening, right? And these become, questionable though for Descartes, right? Because there are optical illusions, as he points out. You can think you see a mirage, you can see water in a desert when it's not there, right? You can see off in the distance, you can see rainbow tracks converge when they don't, and paddles in the water bend, right? So you can question, therefore, as uncertain, right, something dubitable, anything, right, that comes from the senses. So he throws out, right, this is the foundation, which is reliable. He goes next to what we call definitional, right, or formal languages. 2 + 2 = 4, right? If all A are B and all B are C, then all A are C, right? These kind of propositions, right? As Hume will call these relations among ideas, right? Descartes thinks about, well, maybe I can doubt these, right? He imagines maybe an evil genius is deceiving him. So every time he does sums, every time he adds things up, he is misled and gets the wrong answer. Right. This is very much like we can rephrase this in terms of the Matrix today, right? The old movie, The Matrix, right? Where you have people that were actually inside a computer thinking they're living a real life, right? The same kind of thing could happen to anybody, right? You can take somebody's brain out of their skull, right? Put it in a nutrient vat, hook that up to a supercomputer, and then through stimulation of their sense organs, right, sense nerves, right, you could then simulate any environment. They could make you think you were back fighting with Alexander, right, when he's going up against the Persians, right, and stuff like this. Be a great video game. But you wouldn't be able to know, right, if the propositions of mathematics and logic were basically true, these relations among ideas. So he thinks these are dubitable because there could be an evil genius, or in our terms today, a supercomputer, right, deceiving us, right. But the one thing he finds he cannot doubt is that he is doubting, that he has doubts, right, his own mental experience. Right, so Descartes comes back to this one certainty. I think, therefore I am. And the I, right, is not so much about I've got 5 fingers, I've got toes, nothing like that at all. But there is something experiencing something. He is aware of his awareness, right? We call this self-awareness, right? And from this, he realizes he cannot doubt that. And he's got a beginning point now, which he can begin building the rest of his belief structure, which he sets out to do. Now, the rest of his solutions aren't that good. We're not really looking at it much anymore in philosophy, right? You can take your time to look at it yourself if you want to, in his meditations on first philosophy. But it's just not really used anymore. He tries to use this criteria of clear and distinctness. And just because you think something clearly and distinctly does not mean it's indubitable, right? So he seems to get his own criteria of rebuilding, right, mistaken, but his deconstruction of all previous beliefs, right, is considered to be very good, right, and the need, once again, for having a foundation. So Descartes' cogito is going to create as our foundation, our philosophical foundation, one that if you are self-aware, you can be certain is accurate, right? If you're experiencing yourself right now, if you're a robot, you're probably not experiencing self-awareness. But if you're not a robot, right, but you are a human being like myself, and you're experiencing self-awareness, and this intractable fact cannot be gotten rid of through doubt. Indeed, the ability to doubt it proves it. Right, so we got one foundation. Now we're going to go on to investigate the rest of the world. Well, once we know we have our one certainty, we can go on and build the rest out in probabilities. The difficulty we run across, right, is we had this old definition of truth. These are called the 3 theories of truth, right? First one was by Aristotle, right? It's the old correspondence definition of truth, right? If our belief corresponds accurately to the way the world is, then the belief is true. If our beliefs do not correspond to how the world actually is, then the belief is false. So a simple correspondence of belief equals reality, then the belief is true. Now, Immanuel Kant will come along, right, and ask a question, right, about our perceptual apparatus, right? What we have is apples in the world, right? You have an apple, I can look at it, right, and what I'm really seeing is the apple inside my own mind. I am not seeing, right, the apple as it is in itself. Now, Kant will call what's appearing in my head the phenomenon, and the apple actually is the noumenon. And as he points out, it's very difficult to get outside of our heads and to see if our beliefs actually correspond to reality. So for 2,000 years, from Aristotle's time, philosophy had a definition of truth, right? The correspondence definition of truth that Kant, after reading Hume, brings into question. Right, this throws everything into all kinds of messes. Eventually lead to Marxism and all kinds of interesting offshoots, right, from this difficulty of losing the discipline that seeks the truth, losing the very criteria of it, right. So in the time after this, right, you've got this kind of desperation to find another criteria by which we can sort better beliefs from worse beliefs, figure out some way of right, creating a reliable set of beliefs. And it's thought that, well, at least inside our heads, we can take a look at. If we can't examine the noumenal world or the outside world of the apple, we can at least examine the contents of our own thoughts, right? And if we could keep these internally consistent, becomes the criteria, right? Then we know that they are at least, right, justifiable in that sense. And if you could build an entire consistent view of reality out, then you would have a justification for thinking this was an accurate description of things. So this is what happens after Kant. You have this Hegel and Schopenhauer fellows who come along trying to reconstruct things purely in terms of internal consistencies of a system of thought. I'll give you an example of what Hegel is doing. He came with this triadic kind of system of logic where you have your thesis, you have your antithesis, and then these bounce back and forth, war upon each other, if you will, to create a synthesis or a third idea. So we have, on one hand, we have being, reality, existence, right? On the other hand, we have nothingness, right? Right now, reality can't be understood as being because it's stagnant, it's frozen, yet reality is dynamic and developing, right? However, so therefore being is an adequate conception of how things happen, right? Go to nothingness, well, nothing is nothing, not something. Something is here, not nothing. Thus, that's an adequate conception. So these two concepts, being and nothingness, right, bounce back and forth between each other, right, or not being, and we get becoming, where each moment gives birth to the next moment, each moment pregnant with the next moment. We have time enters the universe. He then uses this triadic system to build time, space, and reconstruct everything as we understand it today. Right. Now this basic, right, structure, right, is internally consistent, and his entire system, right, triadically conceived, right, will spell out what's reality for you. Right. Now, Karl Marx will come along, for instance, and take this and turn it on its head in a certain sense, and talk about haves being the thesis, have-nots being the antithesis, and the synthesis being a new class of haves, offset by a new class of have-nots, offset by a new class of haves, that eventually leads to a final communism. But the idea, folks, fundamentally here is that because you can't investigate the world directly, because Kant has pointed out we don't have access to the noumenon, we have to investigate it indirectly through this idea of purely coherence or internal consistency among beliefs. The difficulty you get to is that many systems of thought can be internally consistent, yet disagree. And if we use the standard of consistency to justify, right, standards of thought, then all internally consistent standards of thought are equally justified. You could have 12, 15, 2,000, 2 billion of these, right? And they all would be therefore accurate or true. That doesn't seem to make any sense. So while consistency, internal consistency is an important criterion in evaluating beliefs, it by itself cannot, right, demark which ones we should select. So another criteria was needed, right, to supplement consistency, and this is where we get into the work of Charles Sanders Peirce, right. Now he develops this kind of pragmatic idea of belief justification. Well, now our language is changing here. We're not talking about theories of truth anymore. We're talking about theories of belief justification, and we can go into that in more depth in my 20th century, my 19th century philosophy class. But for the meantime, we'll rephrase this to an idea of a working belief. This pragmatic belief we'll rephrase as a working belief. Understand its ability to effectively and efficiently achieve goals. Right? So if I have a headache, right, and I hit myself with a hammer and my headache gets worse, I haven't done a very good job solving my headache, and that belief is not justified that I can solve headaches by hitting myself with a hammer. If I eat some bear aspirin instead and my headache goes away, I have justification for taking this seriously. And the same would be said, therefore, like things like science. Justification for taking the scientific method seriously is that it works. It allows us to effectively and efficiently achieve goals and results. If it did not do this, it would not be justified. Right, so you take this criteria, which allows you to kind of tentatively investigate the world. Right, your consistency will keep things, once you investigate internally, right, organized. But we have to have a way to actually do our induction. So the riddle of induction, in a certain sense, is solved by simply finding out which beliefs, right, bring about better results and which ones don't. They're testable, right, one against another. So now we can separate between these internally consistent systems. We can now pull out and say, well, this one's the most efficient, effective achieving the goals we're looking at, and therefore it is the most warranted of these internally consistent systems. So we have a testable criteria now. So now we've got our kind of 1-2 punch. We've got our ability to reestablish what Hume would call matters of fact. These aren't matters of fact. These are justified, warranted, non-arbitrary beliefs. It's the only criteria given to them, right? Not only status given to them, not knowledge. Right. Kant has cut us off from that fundamentally. However, and this is also, however, nice with really power to it, was once you think you know something, you're locked in. You don't want to change your mind. You really can't change your mind because you can't be wrong if you knew something. If you just have a justified, warranted belief, you're prepared and ready to change your beliefs if the evidence changes, right? So anytime you need to, you can move these things, right? And be consistent with yourself. You're saying, look, I thought this was warranted. Here's the reasons I had for my previous belief, but now this evidence has shifted. Now I think this is warranted, right? And all be internally consistent because you're simply making things based off the evidence, right? So what these 1-2 punch put together, right, we have our ability to talk about better and worse beliefs in terms of their accuracy of the world and their internal consistency. We now have a way to supplement their initial foundation, right, of self-awareness. So we have a way to investigate effectively any question that we run across, right, using these two methods, these two criteria. So our old definition of truth as correspondence is maintained as the final, what we really want. We recognize we can't get to it. So we use signposts, right, working beliefs, internally consistent. We use these to indicate when correspondence might be there, because we cannot claim to have knowledge, right? We're not creatures that know things, right? It's something to be a real step down, in, I guess, in a certain sense, how humanity looks at itself. We like to think of ourselves as knowing, right, creatures. We're not. We're not the kind of creatures equipped with the investigative tools to render knowledge and omniscience. This is what we're looking at. So we've got to be aware of our own limitations as inquirers and build that into our own answers. To think in terms of knowledge or know is a four-letter word. It is a bad idea and a mistake, right? So now we have these criteria put together, right? We still don't have, however, an answer to what goals we should be seeking, right? Because what works for causing a war, right, or making peace are different questions. Which one should we seek out in a given situation is a different question. So the second book is on then on how to derive an ethical system. But this first book, right, completes an epistemic system on how we can go about forming justified beliefs. I think in a better fashion than Hume's idea of we simply call it custom, right, or whatever we're used to believing is what we keep believing. We base it on sentiment. This is a higher standard than what Hume was articulating, right? I think that's what we're looking at. So we're in a better position to go forward, and we're also in that position to be self-corrective in our belief structures. Right? When you use knowledge, you're not going to be self-corrective in the future. If you use warranted, justified, non-arbitrary beliefs, you're prepared and ready to self-correct. So you've got a program, as it were, a belief program that's rewriting itself as it functions. Right? It seems like necessary in a world that's changing as quickly as today in social knowledge, in terms of society and technology. Right? And philosophy, all philosophy is local, all politics is local, as the saying goes. Right? And insofar as we're in that time of rapid social and technological change, a philosophy reflects that. Is what seems to be right, required and necessary.